let's talk a bit now about the skeletal muscle paradox. Contraction, the shortening of those sarcomeres, as well as relaxation, the pulling apart of those Z lines or stretching of a muscle, also requires ATP. Let's take a look at some of the early experiments in which this paradox was first identified. You can soak a muscle in glycerin, and it permeabilizes membranes, and all of the smaller molecules in the cell can diffuse out. You leave only contractile filaments. I don't have the pictures to show you, but if I were to do electron microscopy on glycerinated muscle fibers, you would see the actin, myosin, and Z lines much the same as we just saw them a moment ago. In this illustration, a glycerinated muscle has been suspended and a weight has been hung at the bottom end. If you add to this cylinder ATP, you can first of all watch it get hydrolyzed and the reaction proceed to equilibrium, and in the process the muscle has contracted and was strong enough to lift the weight. Now if you were to go in with a pair of tweezers or your fingers and try to stretch that muscle back to the relaxed length, you would find that it can't be done. That state is much like rigor, as in rigor mortis. When an animal dies, especially if it dies in a contorted position, if you later try to straighten out the muscles, you can't. In fact, what happens is you have to cut the muscles, you have to tear them in order to straighten them out, in other words, get to look like they're more relaxed. That's rigor mortis, and that is the equivalent status of the muscle in this middle illustration. If you add fresh ATP back to this cylinder, you would at first see nothing happen. The cylinder would look just like the one in the middle of this illustration. But if you were to try to stretch that muscle shortly after adding the ATP, you would find that you could do it. If you waited a little bit longer, and when the ATP is consumed, used up, when the reaction reaches equilibrium, and there's no or not enough ATP to hydrolyze, the muscle will have recontracted and the weight will remain elevated. But as soon as you add ATP, and for as long as ATP is still there, the fiber can be stretched. So obviously that implies that you need ATP in order to stretch, i.e. to relax a muscle. And that's what the conclusions here are. ATP hydrolysis seems to be required for contraction, but ATP is also required for relaxation, to stretch the muscle. And that's the paradox.